3, 2, 1.
I was getting ready.
What's up?
What's up, Scrub?
Scrub?
It's not. It's awkward and off because
it's still not the
stupid
same.
It's Discord.
I think I established this the same last time. Is like it's awkward for me to be sitting in my room, kind of just by myself. I don't actually hear you, but I hear you. It's not the same environment. Anyway, what's up, peoples, scrubbies, and the scrub duds? I'm Doc Bishop. Welcome.
I'm Pants.
In your pants. And we're back again with another episode 2 of Eternal Darkness. We're coming back, talking about the game again. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing a lot better than last week. As you guys know, we are doing the digital stuff right now because Pants got COVID. But don't fret, don't sweat. I'm all doing good. Just a little bit of back pain, but I'm doing pretty good. We obviously we're here to talk about a video game, right?
We are.
And I really actually enjoyed this video game. I had a good time with it.
So, as kind of a recap, let's talk about it. Eternal Darkness is a game brought to us by Nintendo, which is crazy.
Nintendo.
Silcon Knights from the creator-director Denis Dyack, who also created Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, also is bringing us Dead House Sonata. DeadHouseSonata.com.
That's right.
Just got to plug it in there. And yeah, so the first time around, we played through the first 6 chapters, right? So we got to experience, in my opinion, probably the smallest half of the game, where we're just like, cool. We play this game. We play the story. We play as the main protagonist, Alex, trying to discover why her grandpa's dead.
Right. Well, I suppose that's where we left off, right? Because we clearly finished the game, and I think towards the end, there was even a line that Alex had right in the final boss was I'm kind of paraphrasing what she said, but it was basically throughout all of history, someone has always been there to stop you, and I'm going to put an end to you now. So in a lot of ways, Alex, maybe even after playing or reliving the life of her grandpa, or like remembering or reading his chapter page or whatever in the Tome of Eternal Darkness, she now had this like calling, like all these people have helped and stuff, and now it's time to put a stop to the darkness. You know
right.
what I mean?
And we see that in a couple instances. So as a small recap, you play as Alex in the present day. And then every chapter, you find a chapter of the Tome of Eternal Darkness. In every chapter, you play as a different person. Pius, as an example, is the first person you play as. Then you got to play as like Elia, and then Anthony, Kareem. And ultimately, we ended with playing as Edwin Lindsey. He was a architect, right? And that's where we stopped last time. And I was like, cool, we're going to come back into this game. We're going to revisit these characters in some way, which I was wrong because my brain didn't say, oh, hey, by the way, most of them died. So the second half, dude. And okay. And so then we came back to the second half, and it's the exact same. Every chapter that you find for the tome, you play as another different person that's coming into contact with the tome in some way, the artifacts in some way, Pius in some way. And it's really funny. I think most of the game, so Edwin Lindsey was the last person we talked about in chapter 6, and he had actually found the heart, right? The heart of, I forget what it's called.
The heart of darkness, or the essence of Manta Rock.
Manta Rock, you're right. The heart of Manta Rock, yep. And so he gave that to Edward Roivas. And then the next time we go back in, usually when you find the Tome of Eternal Darkness, you're basically teleported to, it's like its own like dimension, its own pocket dimension. And there's these statues of all the characters you're playing as. And the whole time, every time I'm a new character, I'm like, where's Lindsay at? why is Lindsey not in these statues? Right? The whole time.
Yeah.
I'm like, where the heck is he? Where the heck is he? Every time we got all the way to the end, and I'm like, Lindsey's still not here. Where is he? And someone's like, yo, dummy, he didn't die. He didn't die. Like, he found the heart of Manarok, gave it to Edward Roivas, and then booked it out of there. He's gone.
He didn't die. Yeah, he didn't die as a result of the tome.
Right. So that was the reason there wasn't a statue. And I was
see.
oh. And there are a couple people that actually got out and seemingly didn't die. Most people died.
Like Mike Edwards, right?
Mike Edwards got out. Yep, that's true.
He made the final delivery, right?
Yeah,
you think?
He got the last part. So there are ultimately 4 artifacts. There are 3 artifacts throughout the game that are found for the gods, and there's the Heart of Manarok, which is the 4th artifact, which was necessary.
Well, I actually meant more the actual delivery. You remember the part in the game where you're Alex and you return to the main lobby?
Oh, that I don't know. No, I don't know where that came from.
I feel like excuse me, my voice cracked.
Because Mike gave it to Edward.
I thought so too, but I thought maybe since they had become connected, there had to have been someone. That was the only part of the story that I don't know if I truly made off with. I felt like it was him. Because he was the only one of age in recent times that was in contact with his grandfather, or her grandfather, excuse me, that would have known potentially to drop something off.
I'm not.
Who else would have had it though? Wait,
he gave it to her grandfather. So
it also had.
The only thing I can think of is that her grandfather hid it somewhere, because the whole end of the game. So hold on, let's back up a second. So you're playing all these different chapters. There's all these different people. You encounter a big giant boss thing, and then you ultimately get to the end of the game where as Alex you have to gather these artifacts that you've gotten. And so what we're talking about is one artifact was in the bookshelf. There was another artifact that was in Edward Roivas's, Alex's grandfather's safe. And then the third artifact is mailed to you. So at the end of the game, you're able to take these artifacts and then basically summon your own Elder God, Ancient, to fight the opposing one, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Mike Edwards was the person he was able to get the last artifact, which he got from another character who had perished with it. So that's what's really cool, is all these characters are connected in some way, where one finds it, maybe he died, and then he passes it to the next one. But Mike Edwards, what I'm saying is Mike Edwards delivers it to Edward Roivas and says, here it is. Here's this thing that you need. He's like, I don't want anything to do with it. He's like, but he did say I have one thing left to do, and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
But that doesn't... Why would he take the artifact back?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. That is the one he collected, right? It wasn't like the one... So what I had thought was... Oh, I'm trying to think. Well, he collected 2. Because he got one from the old man. Edward also got one from the other old guy. He was because I can't stand looking at... Right. From Peter, right. And then and that was the one that was in the safe.
That's the one that was in the safe, yes.
Yeah, so then, I'm equally as confused as you. Why did he take it back? Or
So I don't know where this package came from. The only thing I can think of is that her grandfather hid it, because Mike said, don't open, he had it wrapped up. He's like, don't open it, because they'll know exactly where you are. Only open it when it's shrouded, right? So
what if he had it shipped around?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe her grandfather was like, okay, cool, and whatever. So there's this huge timeline for Pius Augustus, which is the very second character you play as, which also apparently, granted, Pants and I didn't do this. Apparently, there's a choice at the very beginning. You choose one of the 3 artifacts that are laid out in front of you, and we chose the same artifact. Unknowingly, we chose the same artifact, but apparently that dictates the line of the story, the storyline, the line of the story. What in the world?
The line of the
yeah. What kind of craziness is that? But so that dictates different things. Seemingly the enemies you encounter, it's called the Black Guardian. This is the first major boss in the game that you face in Chapter 9. Despite ours being blue.
Right.
That Guardian is different depending on which one. The final, the Ancient that you face off, the Ancient that Pius serves is different. But the whole point is there's this... So Pius is making a summon that takes 2 millennia to bring his Lord Ancient into existence. And for that also 2,000 years, Alex and company, all these people that are connected through these artifacts in the Tome of Darkness, are fighting against him to stop it.
It's pretty interesting, honestly. It's pretty cool how the overlying story, like you said, these people over time have worked together, seemingly, to put a stop to the darkness. And at the very end, that creature that Pius is trying to erect does come. There's literally cinematics of like this creature. I think me and you both saw the same one.
Yeah, we would have seen the same thing. Yeah.
Did you pick green for your final spell? The color.
I think I did because that's the only. I think that's the only option.
Well, it wouldn't. Yeah, it's the only option, right? It would have made sense.
Tried to choose other things,
but there wouldn't have been a purpose for it.
Someone in my chat actually said, like, I just picked the first thing, but like well, hold on. I think that was the only one that made sense because when you're in this thing where like the summoning portal is, and there are runes around. And I don't know what you did the first time you did that. You select these runes. You had to shut down the magic, basically.
Dispel it, yeah.
Did you choose Dispel? Did you choose the runes to Dispel the first time?
Yeah, I choose. Because my idea was like, okay, negate the city, take away the magic. There's also like, I don't remember where you pressed B to like read this somewhere, but like you would press B to read text somewhere or get info, and it was like, how do we drain the city of the energy or something like that?
That's not what
I did. So I was like, dispel it. But I did get confused on the second time around. I was like, I don't know what we're doing here now.
Yeah.
And I was like, eventually, I figured it out. Was like, we're trying to summon somebody here. We're trying to summon a person. So
on my first time around, where you should have dispelled, which it sounds like you did this, I went in and I was like, I can do this. I'm gonna summon a giant monster. Like that was my first instinct, was to just summon a monster. And so as you put in the final rune, it tries to actually cast the spell, and the rune, it stops on a rune. And if that rune's wrong, it removes it. And you actually have to go back to that tower and put the rune in.
Yeah.
So that's how I found out the Dispel. The second time, you do summon. And then, and I understood that, like, okay, I'm summoning green. So I got it right the first time. If I would have chose blue or red, I'm sure it would have just been like, nope, that's wrong. And I would have had to go and do it again.
Right. And for us, it just made sense to do green. Because, and the reason why I asked is because it made sense for us to do green because we chose the blue artifact thing, I think, at the beginning with Pius. So that's what the enemies we were kind of fighting against were. And it was cool that there was like this semi choose your own adventure enemy thing where I didn't really know as Pius that I was picking the enemy I was going to be fighting against the most. But so that's why we picked green. But like during the end, the final fight, there's these cinematics amongst the main creature you're fighting against, which is like, I think for us it was the blue creature. It was like the blue god or whatever. Yeah, that freaking name. That name's crazy. The names in this game are crazy. The language is wild.
And then I think ours was Zelotov, I believe.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Chaturga or
Chatar. Yeah, Chaturga or whatever.
And then there was
whatever that is.
Manarok, who was like the god of chaos or whatever.
Yeah.
Chaos god. The guy which we only saw a couple times, which was actually kind of unfortunate. I'm kind of
Well, I mean, we only saw it a couple times, but we saw throughout we only saw Mantarok a couple times. You saw the blue one, since we chose the blue one. We saw the blue guy vaguely through like Portal-ish, talking to Pius and stuff. But the other two, we didn't see at all. The green or the red one, we didn't see at all until the very end.
Until the very end, yeah.
Because we summoned it, and in these cinematics that I'm talking about, you literally see this this insane big green feminine creature, which, by the way, is very colorful. It's a goddess, actually. The green magic that we use, every time you cast one of those spells, it is a female voice.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and then
all
the
I
god that you
remembered was
summon...
Pargon.
Yeah.
Pargon. Which my chat the whole time was like, Pargon. We'll talk about what that is here in a few minutes. But it was so good. Every time I loved hearing it, because as you crafted the magic. Okay, so that's ultimately the culmination of the story, and I said all that because you kind of talked about like chosen people before, right? And there was an instance that actually kind of expressed that, where I believe it was Roberto. He was like a surveyor, and he was surveying the ruins that were being repurposed. They were being rebuilt, and he found Kareem from the very beginning. Kareem took an artifact, and he basically was a ghost, and he passed that artifact to Roberto, because originally Roberto found him and Kareem went to kill him, and it didn't do anything. He wasn't affected by Kareem's attack, and he's like, oh, you are chosen, and then he passed the artifact to him, and then Roberto was ultimately killed immediately right after that, and then with the artifact, and that's how the artifact then passed again. So you have this like 2,000 years of just people from all over the place bringing all these artifacts together in order for Alex to then summon this ancient and defeat Pius.
Right.
And that might sound like we just took the whole end of the game, just crammed it into a couple moments, but the end of the game was so much deeper in like everything that was going on. Everything expanded. The story expanded. The magic expanded to a point where I don't know that we can break down every chapter and tell you what was going on, because it was all about bringing these artifacts together. And those experiences may be different. Kind of. I mean, some of them will be different depending on what was chosen at the beginning of the game. And we chose the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think generally speaking, you can say that. I feel like the game, something that I rave on games, either it be good or bad, oftentimes is the pacing, right? I want to say the pacing of this game was actually super solid in terms of like when you're getting introduced to new story bits. When you're getting introduced to new mechanics and stuff, everything seemed to like kind of flow in together and mesh
it was really
pretty
nice.
evenly.
Yeah.
So, like, every time you kind of get in this groove, which I'm okay with grooves in games. I actually have no problem with that. A lot of people have a stance against it and want this huge, massive, like, open world-ish kind of thing. You don't really need that. You got in this groove of, okay, you found a page, read the page, revisit the memories of this person as they existed, and there was secrets. There were things you could collect and miss.
You missed one thing, and I missed something. We've discovered.
Right. So kind of cool and interesting that way. But in the midst of reliving that character that you become, you maybe get an item. Or no, I shouldn't say an item. You get a spell most of the time. Most of the time it's a spell that you get, or
skill.
Or a skill, yeah. Sometimes it is a skill, like playing the piano or surveying. Yeah. Like that was one thing. You're a better surveyor. You could things of structure a little bit better, which just gave you something to open up the main world, something in the house, the mansion that your grandpa had left behind, right? And it just had a good way of like, oh, here's a bunch of story in this page. Here's something that character needs to get through the story that you're playing through right now. Oh, now it's done. Take what you've learned, since that character still applies to you a little bit, since they're helping you, and you're acquiring spells and stuff. Do something in the house now. Find the next page. It just carried you through the game really nicely, I think. There was, like, not really that many times for you to get majorly stuck. You know what I mean?
Right.
In terms of, like, where to go.
I did get stuck at one point. So, like, as we were saying surveying, because Roberto was a surveyor, and it brings you into this time where Pius is like, hey, you're going down here, and you're making sure this place is structurally sound for us to continue building. Like, that's his job. He's sent down there like, look, we captured you, and that's what you're going to do. So you go down, and his job is to go to all these rooms in this place to survey them to make sure that they're good. And he's like, okay, this area needs to be, like, structured up a little bit more, but it's okay. And he goes through, and then he ultimately gets to the end. He's like, okay, he's like, I'm done. He's like, but this place is full of demons and monsters. He's like, you can't keep building. And Pius is like, nope, that's why we're gonna build. And then ultimately he gets killed. He gets thrown into like the big tower, cement tower in his face. But
which is crazy, by the way.
It's wild. But then so the chapter ends and you're back to being Alex. And so I'm like, okay, what did I learn from Roberto? What did I learn from the surveyor? He surveyed stuff. So my brain was like, I have to survey? So I walked around the office, but I didn't walk into that corner. So I left the room and I scoured the entire mansion with no idea of what I was supposed to do. I'm like,
that's
I
so
don't know
unfortunate.
what to do, man. So finally I came back to the office, then got into the corner, and Alex was like, oh, the ceiling's crumbling, which, mind you, it was doing the entire time, and there was a clear sound of the roof collapsing. Dude. And I was like, I just didn't take that extra step for it to be like, would you like to survey the roof?
Yeah, that's super annoying.
Survey the spot, because you ultimately find the next page behind the picture. I'm like, oh, man. And that happened a couple times in this game where I felt really dumb. But you learn skills from every single person except for one, and I think that was Edward himself. You didn't actually learn a skill. You had to complete the chapter, and then you got a note at the end. And he's like, oh, hey, you can go to these barrels of tipple. He's like, my tipple. Which apparently is alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, I didn't really get what he said in the letter, but I went downstairs and just was snooping around.
And then you got a pickaxe. And I'm like, what the F is this pickaxe for?
Right, dude.
And then finally it clicked. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a wall where you can pickaxe into.
I remembered that because earlier in playing the game when I discovered that wall upstairs, I was like, dude, why don't I just have like a hammer or something to go through this with? And then when I got the pickaxe, I was like, oh, like this is going to take me into that room. Because that's honestly, for a while, whenever it comes to like a game or some, like a horror movie, maybe, perhaps about a mansion, there's always the room. And this one was it was the servant's room. It was the servant's closet or whatever. It was their bedroom or whatever. And it was when you see the door there, it's locked. But then you like see it when it's like boarded up or whatever. You're like, why'd they board it up? What happened in there?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh my God, what happened in this room? And then when you find out, you get this pickaxe. You're like, oh, I know what I can do with this pickaxe. You straighten, you go tear it up, dude. And what happened in that room is awesome. I
spoil it.
It's funny that I'll say this because if you watched episode 1 of this of Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, you will remember my favorite character from that episode remains the same. He's still my favorite.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. He's still my favorite character, and what happened in that room is pretty cool. It's just pretty dope. It's pretty crazy or wrong, maybe that I think it's that dope.
Yeah.
Like, why do I think that's dope? But
we want you to play the game for that.
There you go.
So you find these. So there's another chapter where you play as it's like World War I. I believe it's in 1916. You're playing as Peter. I forget his last name. You're playing as Peter, right? It's in World War I. The power's out. So this whole time we know there's a room in the mansion where the power's out. It's like, oh, the breaker box must be whatever. And
oh my God, this part, yeah, I had to look this part up.
The breaker box is in the basement. But while playing as Peter, you find like all the power goes out and it's like, oh, the breaker box, and you go to the breaker box and he's like, there's a fuse missing or the fuse is blown. How long were you stuck there? Were you stuck?
Dude, I was stuck there. I went through the whole house. There, okay,
no,
so you'll notice
as Peter, not the house yet.
That's what I'm okay. Well, it was through
you're in like a cathedral. It's like a church.
The cathedral. So that's what I meant. Like
you visit everywhere a few times, but
yeah. So
Peter,
like,
okay.
I walked through the cathedral like probably 3 times. In this game, you'll find that there's a lot of going back and forth to like make sure you didn't miss something or like rechecking the house or the area that you're in because something could have changed or you might have triggered another event to happen or something. So you need to go back and re-explore areas. I went through and I did it like 3 times. I was like, I'm not finding anything. So I looked it up. And the solution is just like, dude,
that right there.
So
this
clever.
Is exactly how I felt. I was like, oh.
Right. It's so clever, but I don't know if it's like, do you think that's real life? Is that like an old, like wives' tale or something? Like, just like a house remedy trick? Is it real?
Are we going to tell them what it is?
I think, no, because that's like a puzzle.
No. Tell them what it is. Tell them how dumb you felt.
Dude, so it's a penny.
It's a penny.
It's
a freaking penny.
A penny. That's like chopped. It's like a chopped.
You're frozen. You are frozen. He broke. Oh my God, dude! You came back and you're like, so funny.
It's so funny. But
it was a damaged penny. Sure, it was a damaged.
Yeah, it's a chopped penny, dude, and it's not only a chopped penny. It's marked, labeled as a lucky penny, and you started as Peter with that item. You had that item the entire time.
The entire time, and I walked around everywhere without any idea where to go. I was stuck, and finally I told my chat, I'm like, look, chat, I'm like, just nudge me in the right direction. Don't tell me the answer, but I have no idea what to do. And my chat's like, I wonder if you have something to close the circuit. And then immediately my brain was like, oh my God, dude. So you go in the room and you shove the penny in the circuit, in the fuse box, and it completes the circuit enough to turn the power back on. Does it actually work? I feel like if it wasn't something that was legitimate, so you got to think it was 1916, so this is over 100 years ago. Pennies were probably more brass than copper. Well, I mean, pennies are copper, right? So copper wiring.
Pennies have always been copper. So like, yeah, they do have high conductivity.
So I mean, it would be more actual, like, I don't know that they're all like, they're not 100% copper now. They're just copper plated, I believe. But like then they would have been like 100% copper or a lot more metal then. So completing a circuit with copper, that's how we complete circuits. We use copper wiring today.
Yeah.
So would it have worked? I think
Probably.
It would have worked. Sure.
Now,
would it have lasted very long? Probably not. I mean, I don't know.
No.
But given the time period or something like that, and how maybe the fuses, the shapes and fuses and stuff, maybe I could see it. I don't see it being something that would be put in the game that's heavily BS'd. That just doesn't. Right. Based on how the rest of the game is.
This would be the one spot.
This would be the one time they're like, nah, let's just give them a penny. Just no, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah,
I find that super hard to believe.
It's just interesting that I hadn't thought about it that way. With it being like back then, different metals or whatever. I just never heard of that. Like, and I was like, dude, is this like something that like everyone has probably heard of? Like, just put the penny in there and it'll pop a breaker or connector. Or I was like, dude, am I missing something here?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if it was general knowledge.
I just felt kind of dumb, and like I think even Peter was like, I wonder if this will work. And it did.
Maybe that's what it was.
Like I feel like he wasn't even confident. He was just kind of like, oh, I think this is my only option.
Plot twist, what if it is BS? And it is just a lucky penny, dude. They're just like, dude, he's a war guy. He's got a lucky item. This is it.
I'm going to try it. Like, the one thing, though, like, it is really funny that it's like, hey, basically a fuse was missing. And it's like, there's no sign of... It said there's, basically, paraphrased, there's no sign of knowing where it is.
Yeah, another one is, or whatever.
Like, so it was enough information that if you would have read it, basically the game is saying, hey, there's no fuse. You won't find it.
Dude, you know what? I actually felt so... it was almost add insult to injury after I realized that it was the penny after this moment. Because I read that, and I knew... I was like, dude, are you kidding me? They weren't trying to incentivize me to look around. They were literally telling me, hey, you don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to find it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. That's exactly how I felt. And, so dumb. I have a similar story, dude, where a little bit later...
That's too funny.
A little bit later, playing as... oh, man... I don't remember. It was later. So there's an instance where you're in a hallway, you're in the temple, and there's like this big brown box blocking a doorway, and you have to use the trapper to make the box disappear. right? You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
In that same room at the end of the hallway, it's an empty wall.
Oh my god, dude.
But prior when you played previously, there was a door there. So you knew there used to be a door.
Yeah.
I was stuck there for another just good chunk of time. And I ran around everywhere and I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I'm completely stuck. I used my Dispel magic. I used my Reveal magic in that hallway. And I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. And finally I was like, hey, chat. I'm like, what do I have to do? And they asked me, they're like, well, did you use your Reveal magic? I'm like, well, yeah, I did. They're like, if only it was stronger, ... And I'm like, oh my god, so I just had to do the most powerful version of it. Is all I had to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
It made me feel dumb because it's like I knew there was a door there. So the game is teaching you the mechanics the entire time without actually like holding your hand and giving you tutorials. And that is phenomenal. It taught you like everything you needed to do.
That instance, though, I got right there because...
But it was frustrating.
Mentioned, though, and in the temple, the original temple, additions were made. And, like, throughout history, like, certain doors just weren't there yet because they weren't actually added yet. Or, like, you know, certain things. So, you really just need to learn in video games. This game teaches you to check.
Yeah.
You need to check stuff. Because at the very least, even if you knew, as I got stuck on this part for just even a little bit, the main reason I got stuck here, though, is because right before progressing into that area, I stopped playing. I took a break. Came back the next day, and I was like, wait, where am I?
That's
where
the worst thing. That's the worst thing.
Dude, it's so bad. A hidden door like that I was, okay, they just haven't built that door on this, you know, age or history yet, which is wrong. Because I went back eventually and I checked it, and I just needed to cast a level 7 freaking Reveal Invisible.
Yeah, because the idea is that it's not that the door wasn't built yet. It's that the door had been built because you went through it previously and it was blocked. It was built over. You're frozen again.
You are also frozen.
Now you're back.
There we go.
But the game teaches you, like, there's other instances in which that happened, and it taught you that. I wanna do a shout out though, real quick, to some detail of the game. We've talked about how detailed this game is. In that same hallway, there's that box where you have to use the trapper to make the box disappear. And later, I got caught by a trapper, right? And so it sends you to an alternate dimension, and you can refill your health and sanity and magic and stuff. But when you leave, there's an exit. There's the box. There was a box that looked exactly the same sitting there at the exit, and there was a guy like laying next to it also. And I was like, why are these here? What's this box here? And it's because the trapper trappers send people to that dimension.
Oh,
the trapper sent that box and that person and the person that was blocking the door the first time you have to use the trapper to that dimension. Dude. So they're just chilling there. I was like, that's awesome.
So good.
It was so good. And I even said that. I was like, that's a nod to detail that doesn't matter, right? Like, they could have never been there, and I would have never said anything. But the fact that they were there, and I realized why they were there, made it a million times better. It was so good, so good. So
yeah, that's a big piece of, like you said, giant piece, you know, that could have gone untouched, but it adds a lot to the value of the game overall when I have an experience like that, because it's memorable.
Dang it. Before stuff kind of crapped out. Unfortunately, welcome to Discord calls. And that's just what
Welcome
happens.
to wonderful quality of Discord.
And I mean, I think we're fixed. I think we're good to go now. We're back. You were just we were talking about the attention to detail in the game in that instance of the trapper sending us those things, like sending those things to that dimension, which, in my opinion, didn't need to be there, and I would have never questioned it. I would have never said anything, but the fact that they were there made it just that much more. Like, I'll always remember that part of the game, despite it being something super small. Let's talk about the boss. Let's talk about other parts of the game now. Let's talk about the first boss we encountered. The Black Guardian.
I can't really remember that boss.
It was the there are two bosses in the game, Pants. Two bosses.
Oh, you're just talking about those? I guess, alright, well.
So the Black Guardian, the one you struggled with.
Was that really the name of it?
It's called the Black Guardian. So
that doesn't make sense, but okay.
So it does. So I was looking that up too, because I was looking to figure out what it was called. And the other two versions are like super dark colored. They're black, for lack of a better term. But the one we have it's called the Black Guardian or Dark Guardian because of its temperament. Not because of the color of it, but because...
Yeah, and makes sense, I guess.
Because of its, like... seemingly because of its, like, intent. It's an evil, and kind of an evil entity.
Yeah. But...
That's what I found.
I mean, so this... I had troubles on this boss. It wasn't anything, I think... It was just phase 2, honestly. Like, so the boss was broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1, which, by the way, this boss is different. Like, as Doc just said, that depending on what element you picked in the beginning or what rune, I can't even remember what exactly it was that we picked.
It's one of the 3 artifacts.
It was one of the 3 artifacts, okay. So the boss is different depending on what we picked. Artifact we picked in the beginning. Ours, it shot, the phase 1 was like it shot these little balls at us that if we were hit by it, it would deplete our magic. And then phase 2, it started summoning, which, by the way, you have to hit the creature with a magic attack spell, which you charge the attack.
Yeah, which is super important.
Yeah, it shoots this ring out from you. And it can hit, it hits enemies or whatever. But in phase 1, it's just basically going to hit the target that you're aiming for. And that's it. And then phase 2, it starts summoning zombies. The struggle that I had was that for some reason in my game, I just wasn't allotted enough time to hit the Guardian before, like, running out of time, basically. Long story short, it just took a long time. Phase 3 wasn't too bad relative to the rest of it. It just took a lot of time in phase 2, which is actually surprisingly different than Doc's experience.
Oh,
what was your experience like, Doc?
Let me tell you what. So this boss is the first of 2 bosses. There are 2 bosses in this game. It was the first one, and I remember, man, I felt so bad. The first time you see it, Paul Luther goes down, and he's like, oh, and then it comes down, and it just he's gone. I was like,
it absolutely crushes him.
And my understanding is that's different too, depending on the boss. Like, it's the same result is the same, but it's different. Depending on the boss, which makes sense because they're all different. So the second time you encounter him, I was like, oh man, this is where I think you fight him as Peter. I'm like, this is where Peter dies. It's like, this is a bummer. And no, it actually goes into a boss fight, which up until this point, you had not encountered boss fights. So I was like, crap. But you had just recently gotten the magic attack spell. So I was like, okay. And by this point, I think you also had the 5 the Ring of Power 5 and the Ring of Power 7. So I was like, well, dude, I'm going to max out. I'm going to just attack it with the magic. So I did. First try, boom. Ring of Power 7, boom. Immediately knocked it into phase 2 after dodging the balls you talked about. Got into phase 2. It summoned zombies. I struggled a little bit. Was able to find a timing in which to Ring of Power 7 again pretty quickly. And boom, it immediately knocked it into phase 3. And phase 3 is where I struggled the most. Because my brain was not saying, hey, use a smaller power level, dummy. It was, I'm going to try to kill it with this max power magic spell. And there's just not enough time to do that.
Yeah. Because it's something to say in this game that, like, so the magic, like, system is actually made up of words. Like, and you'll find, like, certain words, or runes or whatever have certain meanings, like, that are very simple, like item or creature, self, summon, area, whatever,
absorb,
summon. There's just sort of like certain words. So when you combine these words together with other words, that's how you get spells or whatever. So when you cast a spell, it's literally just saying the words that make up the spell. And so a powered up spell has more words in it, which is what Doc was talking about earlier. The
Pargon.
Yeah. So, like, that was the Pargon is the power up spell. It means power. So you would add to make a 5-ring powered up spell of, let's say, the magic attack, because magic attack is traditionally made up of 3 things: your color, red, green, blue, or purple, which are
they correspond to the ancients that we've learned, right?
Yes.
Chartuga and Zelatoth and Ulyoth and Mandarok. That's where
right.
That's where those.
I can't believe you have those names down.
Well, the only one I'm not convinced of is the Chartuga. I'm not confident that that's the right word.
That sounds like such like a. Hey, can I get a Chartuga pizza? Like,
I'm gonna look it up,
dude. Now I need a Chartuga pizza. Sounds so good.
Does sound good.
But yeah. So each of those colors, like
Chaturga.
Represent.
Chaturga. Yep.
Chaturga. Okay. So each of those colors represents one of the ancients: red, green, blue, or purple. So each of those 3 colors represents one of the ancients, or purple. Sorry, 4. So there's 4 ancients technically, and then you have the 2 other words that make up the remainder of the spell. That could be like dispel creature, or like dispel area, which is how you do like dispel magic, right? Is dispel and then area. So
I believe so. It's something like that, yeah.
And then to make it increase, to make it a 5-ring, because there's your 3 words. And a 7-ring is you had 4 Pargons to a 3-word spell. That's how you got the leveled up stuff. But as you're casting them, as I said, it says every single word in that, and that's kind of your casting time, which is like really intuitive, actually, right? It's like pretty smart, and especially with like, so like, I think that's actually super cool how they did the spells like that, because you know you like talked with Dennis and stuff, and how like the magic system is based on like natural language.
Yeah.
Kind of how he arranged the magic to be in that way, and the fact that like when you're understanding the mechanics of the spell casting, I like to understand that, like, or I like to think that the magic has some kind of purpose behind it, right? Like, we do have a magic bar, but what's taking it to cast a spell? Like, what really is it? Yes, it's magic, but like, is there something?
Camera's gone.
What was I saying?
The magic, and it's being spells and language.
Oh, so it's like I
What
like
it
to
takes to
know
actually do
what
that.
exactly it takes to cast a spell right now. Like, yes, um, sometimes, yeah, like there is some kind of like uh audible casting that you need to do, some kind of audible contribution to a spell, or sometimes you have to like do some kind of symbol with your hand, or there is a um an exterior component that you need to have. Sometimes it's like sometimes it's like cloth or something, you know what I mean? Like mages have whatever. But it's cool how they tied in that's your cat had tied in the audible portion of the spell with this like visual like runes being cast around you into your casting time, right? Like you know how long you have to cast a certain spell because of how powerful it is, for one, and two, it's because you've added multiple words to it that you were going to hear spoken, which I don't know. That is like Pargon, like a word. Is Pargon an actual word in a real language right now?
So I don't know about that. Like I assume these words are pulled from some set of language. I know like with Dead House Sonata, the magic is going to be very similar as well in regards to it being base of language, but it's based off of Proto-Indo-European language as opposed to whatever this was based off of. So this might be like a mix of, I don't know, it gives off this like Latin type of a vibe and stuff like that. But at least so in the game, I'm kind of looking to see if maybe it says, but in the game, Pargon just means power.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's based off a real language or if it's based off of a made up language or a combination of both in some capacity. But because at the end of the day, it's based off of real words. Like to enchant an item, it's project and then item, the word item. So project item, and then the association with one of the three ancients or four ancients, including Manarok, and then adding power just makes it more powerful. So,
yeah. So, I don't think it's. I mean, I think it is actually pretty unheard of for someone to go through and make like their own language or their own words or whatever for a game. But you know, like hats off to him for doing that and like adding that extra flavor, like you said, like extra like value to the content. You know what I mean?
right.
It's more memorable.
Granted, I
Kind of goofy. It's kind of like
don't
Navi.
remember all those words. But
Right. But it's kind of like Navi being annoying, like, hey, listen, hey, it's Pargon. Like, I'm going to remember that.
yeah, it's really cool. It's really funny.
Yeah, and it's memorable, and I enjoy that memory a lot playing the game. And it's funny that having a partner, you know, like you, that we played these games separately, and we got the Pargon runes separately, and hadn't really like, I don't think we had talked on like a call or something since we had both gotten that until we had sat down to do this podcast. And one of the first things you said was like Pargon, and it was just it was so funny. It filled me with so much delight. And that's like, honestly, I don't know what more joy a video game can bring me than like really good memories like that. You know what I mean?
What's super cool, like Shiny Bree, a fellow streamer, her channel points are called Pargons.
Oh, really? That's so cool.
So instead of just like mine are bandages, yours are what, pants points?
That's right.
And hers are Pargons. So her channel points are literally power.
That's funny. Yeah, it's
powerful. Clever. It's super cool. I just knocked the crap out of my microphone. Bree. So,
but so yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on the magic system. I think it's super cool. I magic completely from a if this isn't the kind of definition of game you're looking for, unique, I don't know what isn't. It's the magic system is just like incredibly unique and original. I don't think you get that super often. I mean, like it's like we were talking about, it may or may not be like pretty original words. Like Pargon might be a thing, but like they could have also just been like, "Hey, what's another word for power?" Pargon.
Yeah.
And they just like, boom, throw a dart at it, sticks. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
And it worked. Like even if that's like it, sometimes you just know what to go with, and I trust these guys. As I said in the first episode, I felt as if things were done with an intent, as you said Dennis did do. Yep. He was very intentional with how he did things. It's nice to know that so much care and intent was put into this game, and it came through because it was super enjoyable, like super enjoyable front to back. But in terms of the magic being, I don't remember what the original question was. I felt like I was able to get more of it.
Yeah,
that was the only thing that I was thinking about. I wish I could have gotten more of it at first because I was worried that this spell making was going to get hairy.
Right. We expressed it like, I think you expressed a concern originally of the magic seemed too complex. Well, not too complex, but maybe more complex than it absolutely needed to be. And I think, actually, I'm going to say this. I know that the magic is going to expand a little bit. To what degree, I don't know, but I understand.
Expand again?
Like, I understand.
Okay, I'll say that it needs no further expansion.
Like,
yes,
but then I think we also walked away, like, but we really wanted it to see it emphasized. And in the first half of the game, we were only dealing with magic very, very minimally. Like, we were repairing an item or enchanting an item. We were revealing hidden walls or dispelling shields. Like, that was really it. That's all we were doing. And in the second half of the game, or right at the end of the very first one, I think we learned to be able to summon the Trapper, which we didn't talk about. Which now thinking about that may have been, I wonder if you could have targeted yourself with the Trapper. No, but yeah, like I mean that to send yourself to the other realm to fully max something for basically free. You know what I mean? I don't know. I never actually tried that. But the second half of the game, so we were both like, but we wanted to see it expand. I really wanted to see it expand. I wanted to see it be more offensive and just more whatever. But I was worried about it being hindered by the mechanic of having to go in and select the magic. And you could eventually quick spell it, and you just set it to a button, which became paramount to the game in general. Like, you eventually get into a situation, especially at the end of the game, where you're like, oh, I need this spell, I need to use this spell, I need to use this spell. And we're talking stuff like shields, we're talking magic attack, like with the boss, we're talking enchanting your weapons, we're talking, you got this thing called magic pool, or pool spell, which constantly gave you back health or sanity or magic. And you needed those almost constantly in order to get through a big section of the game. And so just being able to map them to the buttons, your face buttons on your controller, the D-pad, and I think the Y button was phenomenal. And it did exactly what I wanted it to do. And it definitely felt like you were doing way more than just swinging a sword into the head of your enemies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And so
it felt supernatural.
Nice. Supernatural and supernatural. Nice. But so like it gave me a lot of enjoyment to the game in general. It did what I expected, and I think still to date, there's only one game that I even referenced that may have something similar, and there's a game called Lichdom, where you actually are able, but instead of using words, like, this is still unique. that you're using words to craft your spells. Lichdom actually uses like several different types of magic that you combine together to make new stuff. And that was super interesting. But overall, this game is unique in all of these aspects still. And I don't know of anything else that does it. That doesn't mean there isn't anything out there. I'm sure several people saw Eternal Darkness. It was like, this is a really good idea. And they probably ran with it. I just don't know what that would be. If you know, let us know.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've seen anything similar, let us know in the comments. It's, I think, if there's, that's just one, I think, honestly, that's one of the biggest things that Eternal Darkness has at its advantage, at its side, and being as a game, especially a staple of the console, in my opinion now.
I think if you have a GameCube or you have a Wii that's GameCube compatible, like, granted, yeah, sure, people are going to be like, oh, emulator, though. I don't necessarily support that, because...
Even though I've played on it.
Like, but I think this is a game you should own. If you can get this game, I think you should own the game, and you should definitely at least play it once. And play it all the way through. Don't just play it and be like, oh, I got stuck. I don't think the game's terribly hard. But it's definitely fun, and I'll definitely be going through it the other 2 times to experience the other 2/3 of the game, essentially. It might be the same story, but it's a different experience.
Well, yeah, and apparently there is bonus content for completing the games several times through, as you mentioned. We mentioned technically, like at the beginning of this episode, it changes depending on what artifact you picked at the very beginning.
Right.
So,
like, I wonder if, like, we saw a lot of, like, blue Nagas and stuff. You know, the horrors.
Yeah.
I assume all of them would have changed. Like, the biggest difference is, like, the blue enemies, they just sucked your health away. Or not your health, they sucked your magic away more than anything else. So I can only assume, like, green would have sucked away more of your sanity, and red would have sucked away more of your health. Which health is what you need to survive, so red is probably hard. And green is probably not hard, but when your sanity... I know we haven't touched on sanity that much in this episode, and I don't think there's a lot to expand on it, because there's so many different sanity effects that we don't want to just tell you all of them.
Yeah.
Did you experience anything that was super cool that you're like, oh man, this was awesome? In regards to sanity, I have one that I want to share.
I mean, not really, because I latched on to the whole recovery thing.
You get to a point where you start just recovering your sanity because you don't want to deal with it. I definitely understand that.
Yeah, like, it just never got low for me. You know what I mean? So, I actually didn't have a whole lot of sanity.
Okay. My one sanity that I'm going to share is I walked up a ladder and I went into a room, and the room had like 10 enemies in it, but they were super, super tiny, like biting at my ankles.
That's super funny.
Dude, like, I'm talking like the little, like, 3-headed Naga horrors, and they were just at my ankles, just like attacking me and stuff. It was super cool. It was one of my favorites. Everything else you just have to experience. I can say from experience, my sanity was low for a good chunk of time, and that game is hectic. When your sanity's low, if your sanity's all the way low, anything that deals sanity will deal health damage instead. So that's already harder. The sounds, the ambience of the game changes drastically. You're stuck on a permanent Dutch angle. Everything's tilted. Like, all kinds of stuff happen with your sanity low. So if you're like, oh, this game's too easy, play with your sanity at 0. The game is... Yeah,
that would be a challenge.
It's not only harder in terms of difficulty, but it's harder mentally, I think. Like, you hear, like, crying babies and stuff just constantly in your ears. Like, not annoying, but it's there. It's in your mind that you're like, oh my god, dude, the sound is everything just gets nuts from all the different effects. We've covered the story, we've covered the magic in a hugely positive way. Obviously we're having tech difficulties now too. It's the sanity. It's the sanity.
Yeah, it is just the sanity. Play the game if you haven't. You will understand.
So, are we going to rate games as we kind of cover these in the second half? Do you have a rating? Do you have an overall if you had to give it out of a 10 or something?
I'll give it what are we we are the Scrub Hub, right?
We're Scrub Hub. Oh yeah, we haven't done this before. We haven't given the something out of 10 bubbles.
Okay, hear me out. This is the pants portion. Today I'm gonna give it 8.5 pretzels. 8.5 soft pretzels, like the super soft pretzels that you eat with cheese.
Put them in the oven. Good. That sounds super good.
Yes, dude.
8.5
of those babies.
I think I just said bubbles. And here's the thing: you can't have half a bubble, so I'm gonna have to give this 9 out of 10 bubbles.
Oh man,
you're
right.
Like, I know you had a couple instances where you struggled, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I didn't have the same struggles. So my experience was overall a complete positive. I think I only had a couple instances that were super weird and frustrating. And I mean, the game gives you what it gives you. And so I think it deserves a 9 at least. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about any kind of rating. I couldn't hate this game. I will play it again for sure, and I think that's a big reason. The replayability is there. The sound design, the attention to detail, all that stuff.
Yeah.
All that stuff makes it worth it. The fact that the magic did expand, I was surprised, like the PARGON thing. You said I may be disappointed at one point because PARGON just added PARGON to the spell you already had. You didn't get to mix more words. And I think I went into that thinking, oh man, this would be really cool if you did that. And getting PARGON and having the word PARGON repeated. Granted, the way the spells were built, you could build it to where you had your 3 runes and then you just add 4 PARGONs. But the spell said it in a specific way that was really cool.
Yeah.
I wasn't disappointed by that. I actually enjoyed that. And I'm kind of glad it didn't make the spell system more complex. It just expanded it that helped you with the play style. And I think that was really cool too. I like that a lot.
Okay. I guess that's a good way of putting it. Expanding it without making it more complex.
Right. It definitely did not make it more complex. And by the end of the game, where that's the spell system, like, that is super important, right? Like, the very end, you have to understand the spell system by the end of the game. So not making it more complicated as you got those higher rings of power was a great thing the entire time.
Yeah.
So by the time you got to the end, you're like, boom, I know the spell system. Even if you don't remember what each word did, you knew it, and you knew it for sure, and it made it amazing. It made you feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's one particular thing that is major in the story, and at 2 different instances, it's actually pretty often throughout the story that you need to know what the spells are, like how the magic system works, which just speaks to how interweaved the magic system is and how built upon it is throughout the game, and what it does to the story, what it does to the mechanics of how you even progress through this game, the combat, even the enemies were casting spells.
We didn't talk about that. Some of those enemies were annoying.
Some of the enemies are some of them are pretty crazy, but
specifically the guardians, they're like shrimp things.
Yeah.
that were casting spells. I think those were the second most annoying enemy in the game for me. But once you realized how to defeat them, it wasn't too bad. And if you could get past them, you just could. But they were casting spells, which was really neat.
And I think that ultimately that's how I got over my humps that I had with this game. A couple of particular places was the first major boss, the first Guardian boss. I had that phase 2. I had a big problem with that phase 2. But I don't know, I kind of got over it because every game, not to mention, you have to understand the context of when these games are coming out, like what's possible, what other people have done, what other companies have done. I will say, as far as like movement and perhaps fixing, that was like two things I had wrong, or like not wrong. I'm sorry.
You say movement and what? I'm sorry, you cut out a second.
Hitboxes.
Hitboxes.
So like so movement and like hitboxes, or like perhaps like just like certain things that you're looking to achieve in a scenario. Like in phase 2, you wanted us to hit the. Actually, I'm not even truly sure what we were still looking for in that, but you wanted the spell to hit the Guardian when it was vulnerable, but it didn't seem like you had enough time, or like. But then again, like Doc, he just didn't have the same experiences to me, so it's hard telling. Because me and him talked a lot about it, but so I kind of just chalked that up because sometimes you just have weird stuff happen. And for an entire game that I played and really only had like a weird circumstance once, that's pretty good. That's really good.
I think
considering there's no updates on this.
As far as I know, there aren't any different versions.
Yeah,
I think the only update is that this game, I believe, was originally designed for the 64, and then ultimately got moved to the GameCube.
Right. So like, there's no patches coming out for this game constantly. You know what I mean? Once they put it out, it was pretty much out.
And I didn't see any glitches or anything that was super crazy. Like, I couldn't tell you that I saw a glitch.
Yeah,
or
so
any
weird clean.
Any weird clipping or anything. I don't think so.
It's just it's really refreshing, honestly. It's really refreshing to go back and play a game on the GameCube that came out in 2002, right?
Yep, 2002.
That
July, I believe.
I like didn't know anything about this game. Picked it up on your recommendation. From knowing Dennis.
Yeah, it was like recommendation from a game that I've never played either.
Right, because you've heard obviously Dennis, and he made it. You've talked with Shiny Bree. Shout out to them again. They like playing this game quite a bit, so good recommendations all around. So jumping into a game that is old and it is just this original and this unique. It's nice, and it's refreshing. So, really awesome game to play. And, admittedly, it's another game under our belt, right? Yep. We completed another game.
Scrubhub has completed another game, and we've completed another game in our personal libraries.
Yeah, it feels really good. It feels really good to complete another game, and I'm really glad and thankful that it was Eternal Darkness this time.
It was good.
It feels like a game that I should have played before, and it's going to be interesting to share games like this because not everyone has access to them. And I get it, we're kind of moving past, I don't know, some people have moved past retro games because it's a GameCube game. You could consider it retro.
Some would, some wouldn't.
It's not necessarily. I think retro should be like 30 years or 25 years. Kind of like a classic car, right?
I mean, maybe. I was like, you eventually. That's. We can have that. We could have that discussion on a different Scrubhub episode.
Hey,
what
that
would
be
we consider
an interesting
retro?
Topic.
What would we consider retro? Because my viewpoint is very different.
That's interesting.
I think.
But So I mean, it's kind of hard to get everyone into wanting to play a GameCube game, right? Because it's not super accessible, and sometimes people just want to play their PS4. Sometimes they just want to play their PC.
There you go.
Steam games or whatever. But I would really love it to have a discussion with everyone watching this video right now. If you can get your hands on Eternal Darkness, it would be really, really cool to chat with you guys about this. Or maybe you've found us because you have been playing it and you would like to hear our thoughts. And thank you for tuning in and doing that with us. Let us know what you think, dude.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, I guess we're going to end this episode. And Scrub Hub Pinky Promise, if you're not good,
get good.
Get good. Right. See you guys. Bye.